Hey kids, we're back with our Little Pilgrims Progress, and we'll be starting with chapter 7 today. We're going to find out what happened to Christian as he went on the wrong path. Chapter 7, In the Wrong Path. Little Christian went toward the village as quickly as he could, but soon he became very tired indeed. His burden seemed to grow heavier every minute until at last he felt ready to fall down beneath its weight. By the time he reached the hill, he could scarcely walk, and he wondered whether he would ever be able to get to the house in which the friends of Worldly lived. But when he turned the corner of the road that led round the hill, he almost forgot his burden, for he had never before seen anything so terrible as that path. The side of the hill was rugged, and the rocks hung over the road, just ready to fall. Little Christian went a little way, but he was soon so frightened that he dared not take another step. He fancied he could see flames of fire darting out between the rocks, and he shook all over with fear. "Oh, I wish I had not come," he sobbed. "What shall I do?" Presently, a man appeared at a little distance, and as he came nearer, Christian saw it was Evangelist. He had no smile on his face, and poor little Christian felt so ashamed and miserable that he almost wished the rocks would fall and hide him from the sight of the friend whom he had disobeyed. "What are you doing here?" said Evangelist. But little Christian hung down his head and did not speak. "Are you not the little boy whom I found crying outside the city of destruction?" "Yes," sobbed Christian. Did I not show you the way to the wicket gate?" "Yes," said Christian. "Then how is it you are here? For this is not the way to the gate." "Oh," cried the little Christian, "I did not mean to do wrong, but I met a boy who told me I could get rid of my burden in the village, and I was so tired I thought I would come, but I am sure the hill would fall on me, and I am so frightened." Then Evangelist said, "Listen to me. The king sent me to tell you about the celestial city, and you had his promise that he would love you and watch over you. When you fell into the slough, you know how he sent help to pull you out. And you've read in your book that he will always take care of those who trust in him. Why did you believe that what Worldly said and turn from the right path?" Poor Christian was now crying very bitterly, and Evangelist laid his hand gently on the child's head. "You have grieved the king very much," he said, "but if you are sorry, he will forgive you." "I will never be naughty again," cried little Christian. "I am very, very sorry indeed. But are you sure the king will forgive me?" "Yes, the king will always forgive you for the sake of his dear son who loved the little children." "And I may go back to the wicket gate, or will the man turn me away?" "The king does not allow him to turn anyone away. You only have to knock, and he will open the gate for you at once. Take my hand, and I will go with you past the hill." Little Christian wiped away his tears and was very glad. He put his hand in the Evangelist and was led back into the fields. The hill with its terrible overhanging rocks was soon left behind, and the light above the wicket gate could be clearly seen. "If we make haste," said Evangelist, "we will reach the gate before it is dark, and you can stay there and rest until morning." Then, with a kiss and a smile, he told the child goodbye, and little Christian started once more on his journey. Chapter 8. Little Christian enters the wicket gate. The sun was setting when little Christian reached the wicket gate. He had walked very quickly, for he did not wish to be in the fields after the darkness came on. And he was now so tired that he felt very glad indeed to see the gate quite close to him. It stood in a beautiful stone archway, and over it hung a lamp, which burned so brightly that its light could be seen even when the sun was shining. Round the top of the arch, some words were carved upon the stone, and little Christian stopped to read them. The words were these: "Knock, and it shall be opened to you." That was just what the Evangelist said, thought Christian, and he began to knock upon the door. He listened, but he could not hear anyone coming, so he knocked again. And in a few minutes the door was opened by a man who looked something like Evangelist. He wore the same kind of long robe, and his face was grave and quiet. He smiled when he saw Christian and said, "Who is this little child?" "I am Christian," replied the boy. "May I come in?" "Are you from the city of destruction?" asked the man, whose name was Goodwill. "Yes, and I wish to go to the king." Then Goodwill opened the gate quite wide and took little Christian by the hand. As he was stepping in, Goodwill gave him a pull. "Why did you do that?" asked Christian. And Goodwill answered, "The wicked prince has a castle very near the gate, and when he sees anyone leaving his country and entering the way of the king, he commands his soldiers to shoot arrows at him." Little Christian looked and saw the arrows lying on the ground. He felt very pleased to see Goodwill close to the door. "Now I am safe," he said. Goodwill led him into his own house, which was just beyond the gate, and made him sit down to rest while he prepared some food for him. "Who told you the way to the gate?" he asked. "Evangelist," replied little Christian, and he said you would tell me where to go next. "Yes, I will tell you. But how is it that you came alone? Have you no father or mother?" "My mother is with the king, and my father has so much to do he cannot spare time for the journey. So I was obligated to come by myself." "If your mother is with the king, she must have passed through this gate, no doubt. You will hear of her as you go on your way." "Do you think I shall?" said little Christian eagerly, for the greatest wish he had was to know something more of that dear mother, whom he had lost so long ago. "Help said that the king would tell her I was coming, and she would look out for me. Is that true?" "Quite true. You will not see her until you reach the celestial city, but she will often be able to see you." "Have you come straight from home? Did not the boys try to persuade you to stay with them?" "Obstinate and Pliable came after me, and Obstinate was angry, but Pliable said he would like to go to the celestial city. Then when we fell in the slough, he was frightened, so he came back again. I thought I would never get out, but help came, and he was very good to me." "And what then?" Little Christian blushed. "I was as bad as Pliable," he said. When I met Worldly, I listened to him and turned away toward the village. The road was so dreadful, and I was afraid the rocks would crush me, but Evangelist found me and brought me into the field again. And now you have entered the king's gate, and you are one of his little pilgrims. Tonight you must sleep here, and tomorrow I will show you the way to the celestial city." Chapter 9. Little Christian visits the interpreter. When morning came, little Christian felt quite rested and was ready for another day's journey. Goodwill brought him out and showed him a narrow path, which went straight across the plain. "Are there any turnings?" asked Christian. "How shall I know if I come to a place where there are two roads?" "The way of the king is always quite straight," said Goodwill, "and all the paths that lead out of it are crooked. And the wrong paths are generally wide, while the right path is narrow. If you look carefully, you will not mistake it." "I wonder whether you could unfasten my burden for me," asked little Christian when he was saying goodbye. "I could walk much better without it." "I cannot do that," said Goodwill. "You must carry it patiently until you come to the cross, and then it will fall off, and you will never see it again." "How glad I shall be," sighed Christian. "Are there any other houses on the way besides this one?" "Yes. About the middle of the day you will pass the house of the interpreter. He is very kind, and if you ask to see him, he will show you many wonderful things." The morning was bright and pleasant, and little Christian enjoyed his walk very much. The birds were singing so merrily that he felt as if he must sing with them, and the air was so fresh and so sweet that it seemed to take away all the weariness that had troubled him in the city of destruction. "There is nothing to hurt me here," he thought. Worldly did not speak the truth when he said I should be frightened. Just when he was beginning to think he would like to rest for a while, he saw a large house standing near the road, and he knew it must be the house of the interpreter. He went up to the door and knocked, and presently a servant came and asked what he wanted. I am a little pilgrim, he said, on my way to the king's city. I stayed at the wicket gate last night, and goodwill told me that the master of this house is my friend. May I speak to him? The servant went back and called his master, and soon the interpreter came out. He was an old man with a tall figure and a long white beard, and Christian thought he looked very wise. He put his hand on the child's head, saying, "What can I do for you, my boy? Would you mind showing me some of your wonderful things?" asked little Christian. He spoke timidly, for he could not help thinking that although the interpreter might be pleased to have grown-up visitors at his house, a little pilgrim like himself would perhaps be in the way. "Goodwill told me I might come to see you," he added. The interpreter smiled. "Goodwill is my friend," he said. "Are you one of the king's little pilgrims? Come in, and I will find something that you would like to see." He took Christian by the hand and led him into the hallway where the servant was still watching. The interpreter asked for a lamp, and when it was brought to him, he opened the door of a large room. Curtains were drawn before the windows, but the light of the lamps filled all the room with brightness. On the wall opposite the door hung a picture, and when little Christian saw it, he clasped his hands and stood still. It was the picture of a man whose face was more beautiful than anything that little Christian had ever imagined. He was walking over a mountain path. All around him among the rocks grew briars and thorns, which had torn his garment in many places. And his feet were bleeding, for the rough stones had wounded him. In his arms he carried a little lamb. It was tired, and he had laid his head upon his shoulder. And he looked down at it with the gentle, loving eyes. Underneath the picture, in letters of gold, were written the words, "He shall gather the lambs with his arm and carry them near his heart." "Was the lamb lost?" asked little Christian. "Yes," replied the interpreter, "lost and ready to die. Do you not see how tired it looks and how its fleece is torn and soiled?" But the good shepherd heard a cry, and he never rested until he found it. And then he brought it home in his arms. "It must have been a hard path," said little Christian. "The stones have cut his feet." It was a very hard path, but he did not mind that, because he loved his little lamb. I have shown you this picture first because the Good Shepherd is our King's own son. And just as a shepherd loves his flock, so he loves the pilgrims. The little pilgrims are like lambs. You can think of this when you are sad or frightened, and remember who is watching over you. "I am a little pilgrim," said Christian, looking up at the interpreter. "A little pilgrim and a little lamb in the flock of the Good Shepherd. Now I will show you something else." Wow, little Christian went on the right path and now is through the gate and on to the interpreter's house. I hope you can see all of the great symbolism about the king and as being God and how much he loves us, and about how Jesus, being the good shepherd, loves us and we are the lost little lambs. What great imagery of how our faith is brought to life and how it's lived out. So I hope this is encouraging to you. I know it's very encouraging to me to think about God's love and how much he cares for us. So join me next time and we'll start in on chapter 10 and continue to see what wonders are in the interpreter's house. Have a great day.